You are listening to an episode of The Faithful Sinners.
Thank you, faithful sinners, for joining me today. This is a special day because it is our inaugural Faithful Sinners weekly poll results. And I am so happy that you've chosen to take a few minutes and learn a little bit about what we're trying to do here with the Faithful Sinners, because we're all about trying to build our communities and do that through growing ourselves first. Um, with our weekly poll, the discussion this week is actually around our baseline, which is sin. Faithful sinners, is not tied to any particular religious belief or even political structure or environment, because we all have different backgrounds, different lifestyles, and sin flows across all of them. So I may have a particular belief in Jesus Christ being my Lord and Savior, but that does not mean that your faith or your beliefs are discounted or not correct, because we all have to make our own decisions around what we have faith and belief in. But we are all faithful to something, and we've all been a sinner to some degree. And that's what Faithful Sinners really was structured around. Now, the goal with these weekly polls is for us to get a better understanding of the perceptions or beliefs that we have in our communities and our neighborhoods and around the world, but to do so in a non-threatening environment where we can feel comfortable to share what we believe without the threat of being condemned for how we feel about something. But the real goal is for us to understand what others believe so that we can better interact in our communities. So, as far as our question this week, it is our baseline, which is sin. And along those lines, I looked up sin in the Bible because, like I said, I have a biblical belief. And in the Bible itself, there is a reference over 294 times specifically regarding sin. So it obviously holds some weight in the religious community, or at least the Christian religious community. But I'm sure you each have a different perspective on what that may mean to you. With that, we posed that question out for everyone to provide a response. And what I thought was rather interesting is we had 4 responses available. One was the question again being, is it okay to sin? The one answer being yes or no. And then there's also unsure. And then the fourth option was go ahead and sin away. But surprisingly, we literally got 100% responses stating that it is not okay to sin. Maybe that's a surprise. Maybe that's not. It was actually a little surprise to me because I was expecting some outliers on this, but maybe it's just because, you didn't get that opportunity to post your view. Next time, make sure you do. Now, the second part to our weekly poll is the long form question. And the question this week was, what is sin to you? Now, what I found rather interesting about the responses received, they all had one very common theme. And granted, the theme may be a little different based on geographic structure, but everybody all responded with the same response of, if God perceived it to be wrong, then it is considered to be a sin. So that was the general overriding theme, that we all collectively, faithful sinners united, believe that there's a higher power above us or something that's guiding us, and there is a universal understanding of what is right and wrong and considered to be a sin. So I thought that was rather interesting. That was pretty common all the way across the board. Now, again, everybody has different religious and different perspectives overall. So there isn't a right or wrong on what camp you may fall in, but just understand that collectively, regardless of your camp, we all do feel the same way. Now, as far as the other aspect, there's a section that allows our human biology and psychology professionals to engage and share what their industry may think, and even have an opportunity to be featured with their response on one of our recorded or upcoming live sessions. But what I looked at this week is a book that I referenced, which is The Seven Deadly Sins and the Biology of Being Human. Because guess what? We're all human. The interesting thing that I gained from that book, and I encourage you, if you don't mind reading a little bit about medical reports and such, it's an interesting understanding of what we are made of. The big thing I really think we all can probably agree with is that we have different structural makeups, different DNA, and over time, things change in our bodies. And some of these biological changes have a way of changing who we are. And that may be simply because of chemical interactions in our brains or different releases of chemicals throughout our body that may make us a different person or perceive things in a different way than we may have previously. Hard to wrap your mind around some of that stuff. But the one I think that we can all probably better understand is the psychological aspect, where there are definite psychological challenges people may be dealing with, and the medications that could go along with some of those challenges, because those have side effects too. But the other aspect that the book talks about is the trauma that can occur in a person's life, and there are dramatic changes that can occur. So you may find an individual has experienced some level of trauma, be it emotional, psychological, or physical, and the level of trauma impacts them in such a way that they act absolutely completely different than the person they were before, and they don't even recognize it or understand it. So then that begs the question of, how do we as a community, when we look at various crimes, there's horrific crimes that occur, but when you really dig deep into some of these stories, how do we then prosecute or justify certain levels of prosecution when there are other dynamics involved? While bringing it to a higher level, everything I looked up and researched and all the different feedback and videos and support materials that are out there, all go back to the same thing, in that God built us, God made us, and one way or another, He understands our story. And with that, there is some level of a personal responsibility somewhere in there. And regardless of the traumas or the biological changes or our lifestyle beliefs or political beliefs or even generalized religious beliefs, it's a pretty clear, cut and dry what sin is. So I hope you enjoyed this feedback response of our weekly poll. Make sure, if you did not get an opportunity, that you go ahead and respond to our current poll that is out. Polls are released on Fridays, and this current poll is actually released a little early, simply because this is our inaugural week. We're just trying to catch up with our cadence. But along those lines, please make sure to share what we're doing here with your friends or family. Follow wherever you're viewing this or listening to this, because as soon as we hit that magic number that certain sites have, we're going to take a lot of this stuff live. And then this gets wicked awesome and super fun, because you are going to be directly involved in these live discussions. So please follow us on your favorite social media or podcast station, and make sure again to share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Shout it out in your communities that Faithful Sinners is here so that you can join us on this sin journey and we can all sin better together.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Faithful Sinners. Make sure to follow us and like us on your favorite podcast or social media site, and also check us out at thefaithfulsinners.com.